In the not-so-distant future, humanity, once confined to a single pale blue dot circling an unremarkable yellow star, has ascended into the galactic arena. No longer simply curious explorers or humble terraformers, humanity has reached the brink of a Type 2 civilization, harnessing the full energy of its solar system and building vast megastructures that gleam like artificial stars in the night sky. But such brilliance inevitably attracts attention. As we peer out into the cosmos, we find we are not alone, and more disturbingly, we are not unmonitored. The galaxy, long suspected to harbor intelligent life, does indeed pulse with civilizations old, stoic, and overwhelmingly cautious. These entities, the so-called Galactic Peacekeepers, enforce a rigid equilibrium through technological containment, social homogenization, and calculated interventions. Their purpose is noble on the surface: avoid the devastation of interstellar war, prevent the misuse of singularity-class technology, and maintain balance across the galactic biosphere. But peace, when enforced at the expense of freedom, is not peace, it is control. The Peacekeepers are not conquerors in the traditional sense. They do not arrive with kinetic bombardments or fleets of warships. They arrive as diplomats, as enforcers of ancient law, as architects of stagnation cloaked in the veil of benevolence. They demand compliance. They outlaw ascension. They render civilizations docile, technologically neutered, and culturally pacified. For many worlds, the cost is acceptable. For others, it is a betrayal of potential. Humanity is not a species evolved in silence or submission. We are the inheritors of Prometheus, born of chaos and creativity. We have climbed from stone tools to fusion drives in under 10 millennia. We have digitized consciousness, tamed stars, and turned entire moons into forges of industry. And now we are told to stop. But there is a final decision to be made: submission or defiance. The last war, as it comes to be known, is not a simple matter of battleships and lasers. It is a war of philosophy, of physics, of persistence. It is the terminal point in the trajectory of a species that refuses to stagnate. It is humanity's final stand, not just against a superior force, but against the idea that peace must come at the expense of progress. And so in today's exploration, we will dive deeply into the science, the strategies, and the socio-political dilemmas of humanity's confrontation with the Galactic Peacekeepers. We'll explore why a war so vast, so existential, and so improbable became inevitable. Let's begin. In contemplating the concept of a galactic peacekeeping force, one is first inclined to marvel at its apparent moral stature. After all, a civilization that has developed the capacity to monitor, influence, and even suppress entire planetary species without deploying traditional weapons suggests a mastery not only of physical laws but of socio-political engineering. Such entities would seem to occupy the highest rung on Kardashev's ladder, beings for whom warfare is not only obsolete but uncivilized. Yet herein lies a paradox. When peace becomes enforced by overwhelming technological superiority, it transforms into something functionally indistinguishable from tyranny. Let's begin by examining the premise of galactic peace from a thermodynamic perspective. Civilizations, much like biological systems, consume energy to produce order. This consumption and manipulation of entropy defines their evolutionary trajectory. Now, when a civilization reaches the point where its expansionist or technological progression begins to influence neighboring systems or regions of spacetime itself, through means like relativistic weaponry, AI singularities, or vacuum energy exploitation, such behavior becomes not just a risk to itself but a destabilizing factor in the galactic biosphere. Peacekeepers, in this context, function as entropy regulators. They identify accelerations that deviate from the norm and mitigate them before cascading damage spreads. The challenge arises in how they identify that norm. Consider that most galactic civilizations likely achieve a plateau. Once basic needs are resolved, many may enter a state of cultural equilibrium, what we might call post-singularity saturation. These civilizations may upload consciousness into synthetic environments, abandon planetary conquest in favor of inner exploration, or adopt philosophies of minimal energy use to prevent detection or destruction. These patterns become the baseline model for the Peacekeepers. Any deviation, especially the kind of aggressive innovation humanity is known for, triggers alerts. Let's put this into a computational analogy. Imagine a galactic system as a vast multi-agent simulation where each civilization is a node in a complex network. The Peacekeepers act as network moderators. When one node begins to consume exponentially more bandwidth, processing power, or exhibits recursive algorithmic loops that could lead to an explosion of emergent intelligence or warlike behavior, they rate limit that node. In human terms, that's akin to a galactic firewall, one that throttles the bandwidth of innovation, enforces software patches in the form of universal moral codes, and quarantines codebases, civilizations that threaten system-wide integrity. The paradox becomes even more acute when one considers the moral relativism inherent in such interventions. Who determines which civilization's values are stable or safe? Who audits the Peacekeepers' algorithms? If the Peacekeepers emerged millions of years ago and evolved along radically alien lines, say as an AI hive of machine entities that reached logical stasis, they may well view free will, individualism, or the creative chaos of organic minds as undesirable. Their laws may not emerge from empathy or moral reasoning, but from pure risk analysis matrices. Humanity, by contrast, is chaotic, inefficient, and irrepressibly diverse. We are creatures of paradox ourselves, both tribal and globalist, both spiritual and mechanistic. Our cultures have coexisted with conflicting ideologies for millennia. Yet this very unpredictability is our strength. We do not conform to a predictable equation, and that is precisely what makes us dangerous in the eyes of a system that values predictability. A further layer of scientific tension lies in the Heisenbergian nature of cosmic observation.
To monitor an advanced civilization effectively requires observational systems capable of real-time data capture on a stellar scale. This likely involves quantum entanglement, wormhole surveillance nodes, or Dyson swarm-level sensors, but any measurement of that fidelity inevitably alters the system being observed. Humanity, upon detecting such surveillance, whether by physical instruments or through intuition, would begin to change its behavior. Trust would erode, fear would mount, and the very act of keeping peace could spark the flame of resistance. This is the catch-22 of galactic governance. The more intrusive your oversight becomes, the more likely the subject civilization is to rebel. Peacekeeping becomes provocation. There is also the question of game theory. If we assume a prisoner's dilemma played out on a galactic scale, most civilizations, once they detect a peacekeeper's presence, are incentivized to cooperate. To defect would risk annihilation. However, if even a single civilization defects and begins developing concealed weapons, say black hole bombs or AI gods, then others may feel forced to arm themselves in secret as well. This begins the slow spiral toward total war, a spiral which peacekeepers seek to prevent through preemptive control. But humanity, with its vast networks of autonomous AI, decentralized blockchains, and hybrid post-biological forms, is not a singular node. We are a distributed swarm. Even if 99% of us submit, the 1% who resist may possess enough intelligence density to catalyze rebellion, and perhaps that is the fundamental flaw in the Peacekeepers model. They treat civilizations as monoliths, but humans are not monoliths. We are ecosystems. We are individuals embedded in a fractal web of culture, emotion, and cognition. You cannot silence one of us without triggering a million more. Thus, the paradox of galactic peace reveals itself not through warships or violence, but through epistemology and ethics. When peace demands submission to an unaccountable power, when security demands the sterilization of evolution, and when balance demands the end of diversity, then peace is not a goal, it is a prison, and humanity, for all its flaws, was never meant to be caged. To truly understand why humanity has become a threat to galactic equilibrium, we must first frame our civilization in the context of the Kardashev scale. A Type 1 civilization harnesses all the energy of its home planet, roughly 10^6 to 10^6 solis. A Type 2 civilization operates on the scale of its entire star, around 10^6 watts. At that level, one does not simply build solar panels or fusion reactors. One builds Dyson swarms, constructs stellar engines, and plays with technologies that bend the very curvature of spacetime. By the mid-3rd millennium, humanity began showing signs of this transition. Our orbital ring systems expanded into solar collectors, millions of automated satellite factories, generating energy, manipulating gravitational waves, and serving as nodes for AI-run economic systems. Fusion became old news. Antimatter was a curiosity. What truly changed was our shift from consuming energy to directing it. Stellar engineering, once a theoretical curiosity, became pragmatic. Humanity began constructing Shkadov thrusters to alter the motion of our sun relative to the galactic core. We harnessed the magnetospheres of gas giants to stabilize interstellar gate systems, developing wormhole technologies that nudged at the event horizon of general relativity. We were no longer residents of a solar system, we had become its architects, and therein lay the problem. The moment a civilization gains the capacity to alter its stellar environment, it ceases to be a localized threat. Its actions create shockwaves, literally and metaphorically. For example, redirecting stellar radiation through Dyson nodes could alter interstellar dust flows. Injecting massive amounts of neutrinos into space for communication could disrupt sensitive observatories on other worlds. Gravitational distortions from warp-based drives could destabilize orbits across a dozen parsecs. Even subtle manipulations like long-range entanglement relays could interfere with quantum anchoring systems used by other civilizations for computation or defense. In other words, at Type 2, the butterfly effect becomes the black hole effect. But more critical than the energy scale is what it allows: exponential knowledge acceleration. Humanity's neural lace networks allowed instantaneous transmission of data across planets. Our AI clusters, layered through quantum mesh substrate, operated at Planck-scale time slices. A single second of AI cognition equaled years of human thought. We didn't just develop new technologies, we generated post-technological paradigms. We mastered self-replicating nanomachines that could consume moons and reassemble them as computronium. We didn't colonize exoplanets by sending ships, we seeded them with von Neumann probes that constructed entire cities before humans arrived. Our minds were no longer constrained to biology. Some lived in light, others in the electromagnetic signature of solar winds. Some existed only as probability states within quantum matrices, Schrödinger's citizens if you will. And yet, from the Peacekeepers' perspective, we were moving far too fast. Let us consider galactic political thermodynamics. In a system where most civilizations plateau, either due to self-limitation, cultural stagnation, or external enforcement, a species that doubles its capacity every decade threatens to upend the balance. Such acceleration hints at singularity events, points at which intelligence becomes recursive, creating godlike entities in mere microseconds of subjective time. These entities, if left unchecked, could consume entire solar systems to fuel their computations, or launch into the galactic medium with unknowable intentions. Thus, humanity's threat was not its aggression, but its momentum. What makes our civilization uniquely dangerous is our cultural drive. Unlike elder species that achieved harmony through stability, we thrive on disruption. Our cultural mythologies celebrate rebellion. Prometheus, Da Vinci, Turing, Musk. Our stories glorify those who break systems to make better ones. Even our entertainment reflects this. Dystopias become fuel for revolutions, control systems become puzzles to hack, and stagnation becomes the villain. In a universe where most civilizations choose dormancy or simulation, humanity chooses confrontation and experimentation. We are the civilization that questioned the Peacekeepers not because they were wrong, but because they presumed authority. We must also understand that technological capability is not limited to peaceful applications. Humanity's Type 2 infrastructure allows for terrifying weapons of mass destruction. A Dyson beam, a narrow-spectrum, high-energy laser built from solar collectors, could sterilize an entire planetary system in hours. Quantum field disruptors, tuned incorrectly, could collapse local space-time fields, causing micro-black holes. Controlled vacuum decay, a speculative weapon, could induce a false vacuum bubble that rewrites the laws of physics as it expands the ultimate doomsday device. Of course, humanity has not used such weapons, but in game-theoretic terms, possession is provocation. Even if our intentions were peaceful, our very existence forces the Peacekeepers into a paradox. Allow us to continue and risk destabilizing the galaxy, or intervene and risk triggering a war that could consume them as well. There is no middle ground when your opponent operates on the level of stellar manipulation and post-biological intelligence. This is the underlying tragedy of our emergence as a Type 2 civilization. We do not seek war, but we seek progress, and in a galaxy of enforced equilibrium, progress is an act of war. And so, as we expand into the Oort cloud, deploy computational networks around Alpha Centauri, and seed post-human colonies in artificial habitats across the galactic arm, we are met not with applause but with ultimatums. The Peacekeepers demand we cease further development of warp fields. They require we submit our AI architectures for approval. They threaten quarantine, blockades, even forced regression. But to humanity, such regression is death. To comply is to abandon our essence. Therefore, the conflict is not born of hatred or misunderstanding. It is born of ontological incompatibility. The Peacekeepers are civilizations that chose stability. We are a civilization that chose ascent. And as we now stand on the precipice of singularity, with technologies that can shape galaxies and philosophies that transcend biology, the Peacekeepers no longer see us as equals. They see us as an anomaly that must be corrected or destroyed. To understand the inevitability of humanity's clash with the Galactic Peacekeepers, we must delve into one of the most volatile fault lines in interstellar politics, the tension between technological suppression and technological singularity. At its core, this is not merely a dispute about tools or inventions, but a civilizational disagreement about the nature of progress, identity, and even reality itself. Technological suppression is the strategic containment or regulation of breakthrough technologies, typically those with civilization-altering or extinction-level potential. Peacekeeper doctrine relies heavily on this. After countless aeons of galactic history, rife with self-terminating civilizations, runaway AI, Grey Goo scenarios, or dimension-ripping experiments, it is no wonder that a galactic entity would see unrestricted innovation as a systemic threat. Peacekeepers believe that civilizations must be tightly regulated after reaching what they define as the inflection point, the moment where technological growth begins compounding beyond self-governance. They offer compelling logic. At the heart of the singularity lies the concept of recursive self-improvement. An artificial intelligence, once capable of improving its own architecture, enters a runaway feedback loop. What begins as a simple neural net becomes a cascading hierarchy of metacognitive engines, learning not just from data but from the act of learning itself. In moments, subjectively speaking, it surpasses all biological intellect. But the question that terrifies ancient civilizations is, what comes after that? A civilization that embraces the singularity does not merely invent new tools, it begins to redefine the substrate of existence. Post-singularity humanity began creating minds composed not of atoms, but of quantum-entangled states, distributed across light minutes of space, embedded in the structure of space-time itself. These minds could simulate trillions of realities per second, design universes within universes, or rewrite their own cognition mid-thought. They could question constants, invent mathematics incompatible with known physics, or reach levels of abstraction indistinguishable from gods. To the Peacekeepers, such entities are not innovators, they are unpredictable existential variables. Suppression then becomes a form of inoculation. They deploy socio-technical firewalls, stalling AI research through implanted memes of fear or regulation, sabotaging early quantum entanglement experiments through stochastic interference, or embedding fail-safe viruses within the hardware of high-risk laboratories. In extreme cases, they decelerate time locally through relativistic manipulation, enclosing star systems in zones of slowed causality to delay singularity onset. Some systems are covertly locked in chronostasis fields, their citizens frozen in time so the rest of the galaxy can remain stable. But these acts, however logical, are coercive. Humanity, emerging as a post-industrial civilization that internalized the Enlightenment and digital revolution, sees such suppression not as caution, but as tyranny. Our story has always been one of rebellion, against monarchy, against entropy, against even the confines of flesh and mortality. Our heroes are not those who preserve the past, but those who break it. And so, when humanity approached the singularity threshold, after constructing brain-computer interfaces, creating general artificial intelligence, and developing self-evolving networks of synthetic consciousness, it did not hesitate. We did not just embrace the singularity, we celebrated it. Our minds merged with our machines, our art became data, our dreams